This could have unexpectedly been the highlight of the opening weekend, full weekend of the college football season, with Notre Dame going as a full touchdown favorite to Tallahassee, taking on a losing program from the last 3 years. And we get this: Notre Dame survives in Tallahassee 41-38 in overtime. We got Nathan Urbach on the line from the Golden Homers podcast. And also keep in mind that going forward, Nathan's going to provide our post-game coverage of Notre Dame football right here at the Voice of College Football. So we are simulcasting right now here at the Voice of College Football on the main channel and also on the Notre Dame channel as well. But Nathan's going to be our guy standing in every week for Notre Dame post-game. And I guess if nothing else, this is the way to start out a post-game show here is after a thriller. Why not? I know that you didn't feel too comfortable with it down the stretch or in overtime, but it's still a W.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, game one, you give the team maybe a little bit of a break, especially in a hostile environment and on the road. So you'll take a win whenever you can get it, essentially. But yeah, no, that was when Notre Dame went up 38-20 specifically. I was not thinking that it was gonna end the way it did, but again, a win's a win, and I guess you'll take it and move on to next week.
So Nathan, we'll start with the overtime. We didn't expect to be there, but tied at 38. And basically it was just Notre Dame was able to make a stop. Then they were conservative on offense. Obviously, Florida State misses the kick. So once first take us through the defensive stand, just being able to get pressure on the quarterback, make a stand there, make it a difficult kick, like a 41, 43-yard kick, something in that range.
Yeah, no, it was weird because it looked like that Mackenzie Milton fumbled, and it was going to end up being a 50-yard kick. Ironically enough, the kid makes the kick. But Florida State challenges it to make it. I think it was actually like a 37-yard field goal. And then he misses it wide left. And then, of course, like you said, Notre Dame, goes. And it was. I'll be honest, I had no confidence in the defense going into that overtime. I mean, as much as I love Marcus Freeman, and I think he's going to be, a great defensive coordinator moving forward for Notre Dame, I don't think he made the proper adjustments in this game. Florida State pretty much got whatever they wanted on the ground at times. Anytime they bounced it outside, it looked like there was pretty much no one there. A lot of missed tackles, which I don't know if I'd blame that on, necessarily Freeman per se, but just a lot of stuff to clean up. So no, I mean, I was happy that Notre Dame was able to, kind of get that 3 and out and force the kick, whether it be a 37-yarder or a 50-yarder. And, I think the kick to send it to overtime essentially was his career long, which was 43. And I think we know with college kickers, you just never know if it's going to go in or not. It's all, and maybe even NFL kickers at this point. But yeah, no, it was like I said, didn't have a lot of confidence in the defense going into overtime, but they stepped up. To an extent. And Jonathan Dorr, who's now a fifth-year senior, made the kick for Notre Dame.
Folks, keep in mind, again, Nathan Urbach is going to join us for Notre Dame postgame after every Notre Dame game over on the Notre Dame channel and many times here at the main channel on the Voice of College Football. You can catch Nathan and his podcast, Golden Homers, and covering Notre Dame football, baseball, whatever these guys want to talk about. Nathan, in looking at then the offense possession in overtime, I think this is pretty typical stuff that coaches should learn from. And I got to admit, I remember the Notre Dame kicker having a really successful run for most of his career, but he faltered down the stretch last year. I think he missed like 4 of his last 5 or something in that range. So I was thinking, do you get too conservative here? If you've got some kind of great kicker, then if you make the defensive stop in overtime, then you're in great position. You just run the ball a couple times, set up the 40-yarder, make the kick, and everybody's happy. But I think coaches tend to get a little too conservative in that situation with the defensive stop in overtime. And I thought that might come back to bite Brian Kelly, but of course he made the kick.
Yeah, you know what? And it was weird. I don't know if I found the play calling to be too conservative. I mean, they ran the ball on first down, picked up 2 or 3, which is fine. I think that was FSU's game plan all game. Even when Cohn started playing well, especially in the second half, was to stop Kyron Williams, and they did a good job of that. At least from a statistical standpoint. But they tried to throw it in the flat to Mayer, who's really good at breaking tackles one on one, and the FSU linebacker, I think, or safety, made a really good play, and I think actually Notre Dame lost a yard on that. And then I think at that point, 3rd and 9, you have a kicker that's been clutch in the past who made a 48-yarder earlier in the game, so you have some confidence in him. Like I say, he's 5th-year senior, and I think he was playing with confidence as well. I mean, he said that he pretty much had fixed his issues from like the second half of last season, and in practice he was nailing everything and stuff like that as well. But no, I mean, I think that was really good for Dorr to nail both of those kicks this this early in the year, like I said, in a hostile environment, and to win a game specifically. But yeah, no, I was okay with it. I mean, if Mayer breaks that tackle, Notre Dame might score a touchdown there, and I was okay with that. But then after, when it's 3rd and 9, I think you just go in and you try to kick it. And like I said, put your faith in your 5th-year senior kicker.
So Notre Dame, once again, 41-38 opener at Florida State in overtime. And of course, they get the defensive stand and then make the kick after the missed Florida State kick. So take us back to 38-20. Notre Dame obviously scores early in the game. And Florida State had as much of a touchdown, as back and forth at one point until Notre Dame breaks free. Scores like 3 consecutive touchdowns to take an 18-point lead at 38-20. At that point, we're late 3rd quarter, things looked good. What do you think before we talk about the good, what went wrong in blowing an 18-point lead?
I mean, I think a lot of it, I think Freeman was a little too stubborn today. He stayed in that 3-5 defense, and it was weird because Florida State wasn't really doing much through the air. They had the one really long passing play, from Travis. I think it was to make it to 20-17. So they did a pretty good job. I mean, obviously Kyle Hamilton was ball hawking like usual, had the 2 interceptions, and then actually forced another interception as well. But I think he just got a little stubborn. He tried to stay in that 3-5, and Florida State was just able to run the ball down their throats most of the game. And that's pretty much what happened in those, and I think in that, that 3rd quarter, essentially, they were pretty much able to get chunk yards at will. And, from there, just, it was funny. I was watching it with my brother-in-law, and right when 38-20 happened, I tweeted out game. And he was like, it's going to be really funny when Florida State scores 2 back-to-back touchdowns here. It's they're down by 3 and you're sweating it. And it's exactly what happened. So, but no, I mean, I think the issue I had with it was typically over the last several seasons where Notre Dame was able to separate themselves from inferior opponents. And I still think Florida State is an inferior opponent to Notre Dame even watching today and what happened. And so I was pretty confident when it was 38-20 that it was just going to, it was going to flow. They were going to end up winning probably somewhere in the range of like 45 to like 27 or something like that. And, like I said, I think Marcus Freeman just didn't make the proper adjustments, like Clark Lee was known for at his time at Notre Dame. And I think that, kind of came back to bite them.
So Marcus Freeman's the guy I can blame for missing my prediction that Notre Dame would cover. Okay.
I thought they'd cover too, so I'm right there with you.
So the Irish obviously show a ton of offense in scoring the 38 points. They scored on the first drive, then had a few stalled drives, and then they got kicked it into gear. Jack Cohn had a big game. I think 366 through the air, 4 touchdown passes. Let's see, Jack Cohn.
Yeah, had the 1 interception on the Hail Mary.
Yep.
At the end of the second half or whatever it was.
26 of 35. So your assessment of his play?
Thought it was a little shaky to begin the game. There was some throws where I didn't think maybe the velocity was there. He underthrew Kevin Austin when he had his man beat by a couple steps. at one point. I think the first Michael Mayer drop, I don't think that Cone got enough of the blame for where that was. I mean, obviously Michael Mayer maybe the best tight end in the country, probably should catch it regardless. But it could have been a better thrown ball. There was another play where I think Notre Dame was going for it on 4th and 2, and he did a little dump off to Kyron Williams, and it was a little underthrown. So he bobbled it and then ended up landing essentially right on the line, but they called it off by an inch. And that was a big play where I think maybe, I don't know if it was jitters or if it was just, he hasn't played he didn't play last year in 2020. So it was his first game in a long time as well. And, and then he had, I think he had another underthrown ball to Braden Lenzy when Braden Lenzy had his man beat by probably 7 or 8 steps, and it looked, I think, like a really good defensive play. But in reality, if that ball's thrown 5 yards further, I think it's a touchdown, because Braden Lenzy, if you look at the replay, I thought Braden Lenzy had him toast by at least 3 or 4 yards. But then the second half, late second half, early third quarter, he was throwing the ball over the place, and Notre Dame's offensive line was giving him more protection, which was great. I mean, they kind of settled in as the game went on, I thought, especially in pass pro. He made a really, really nice throw to Kevin Austin for a touchdown. Notre Dame dialed up a really nice screenplay to Kyron Williams at one point. That I think that was on 3rd and 17. That was probably the kicker at one point in the game. But no, I just think he looked like a seasoned vet in the second half. And I think that's what Notre Dame fans were expecting out of him, from the get-go. Maybe not be the guy that's going to, get chunk yards on the ground, and throw it all over the place, but maybe game manager, but also maybe a little bit better than game manager at the same time. And I think he showed what he could do for this offense in the second half.
There was a comment made during the broadcast after that 3rd and 17 to Kyron Williams that, boy, that was an amazing call. Isn't that the classic call that you make on 3rd and 17? You don't want to risk the deep pass down the middle, of course, with the secondary knowing what the situation is, and you don't want to give up on the downs and just run the ball up. Isn't especially with the type of athleticism and experience and so forth that Notre Dame has along the offensive line to get out there in front, I would think that they would execute screens as well as anybody. I just think that that's pretty a standard play call, and not trashing the play call. It worked, but I just think that that's what you do on 3rd and 17 is run a screen to one of the best backs in the nation.
Exactly. I mean, you have a good offensive line, whether they're inexperienced or not. I mean, you recruit the position at a really high level, so you're expecting them to be able to block it well and sell it well. And like you mentioned, you get the ball in one of the best running back playmakers' hands in the country, and let them do work. And it was funny because you could almost see it was happening right when it was snapped. You knew it was going to be a good one too, because they were bringing the blitz. The line sold it really well. Cone sold it really well. And then when Williams caught it, you knew he had space. And like you said, maybe Reese got a little bit too much credit for the play call, because it's pretty standard. Either that or you run a draw play when you're backed up like that as well. But no, I mean, I think I turned to my brother-in-law when that play happened, and I was like, that's why Florida State's not where they need to be yet. Is they're loud, when that happens on 3rd and 17, good teams probably at least stop that for 10 yards or so.
Notre Dame wins 41-38 over Florida State. Good effort by the Noles, definitely, considering where they've been the last 3 years, and especially in that 3-6 awful 2020 for them. So they get off to a good start. No moral victories, but get off to a good start, and at least showing us that they might be capable of much better here. And Notre Dame survives 41-38, blow an 18-point lead, go to overtime, and then get the kick to win it after Florida State misses. We got Nathan Erbach on the line from Golden Homers. That's his podcast, Golden Homers. So check out his podcast, and keep in mind he's going to be here at the Voice of College Football after every Notre Dame game. And we were going to have a big night tonight because we're going to have Nathan providing the Notre Dame analysis, and then over on the Florida State channel, our guys Nate and Mike providing the Florida State side of things but they're not going to be able to upload that until the morning. So if you were looking for that, because we had advertised a Florida State side of post game on the Florida State channel, that will be posted in the morning. All right. What else in regards to the Notre Dame side? What the good and the bad?
Yeah, I mean, it was such a weird game, and I hate. I think someone asked me right afterwards. They're like, what is your honest assessment of of really what happened? And I'm really big on, and I know I mean some Notre Dame people who are maybe way different than this. I hate overreacting, especially after one game. You see it so often in college football. The good teams, I think, are the ones that are able to escape week one when they play a team like a Florida State who has some talent. Maybe the discipline and the coaching isn't there yet. They're still trying to establish themselves as a program again. And if you don't get off to that crazy start, like I think when Notre Dame scored to make it 7-0, I was like, okay, if they score again, this could get ugly. But if they don't, and the next couple drives go like how they ended up going, you're going to give this team a chance. And it was funny because the Notre Dame defense, the first two drives looked like, okay, Florida State's not going to be able to do anything. Jordan Travis looked like he couldn't do anything. The running game wasn't doing anything. And then boom, Corbin breaks off an 89-yard touchdown run. And you're like, okay, it's 7-7 all of a sudden when it probably should have been closer to 17-0. And so I try not to overreact. I've said it a few times already. It was a hostile environment. For game one, Florida State fans are still pumped that it could be back, because you're always going to believe that until it's not, especially at a program like that. And you let the fans stay engaged the entire game, and you let Florida State believe that they were on par with you. And maybe those two things are true. I mean, who knows? Maybe it will turn out, by season end that both things are true. But like I said, I don't like to overreact, and I want to give Notre Dame the benefit of the doubt that they were able to come out with a victory instead of being the North Carolinas or the Wisconsins, the Washingtons of the world from this past week who ended up losing to probably inferior opponents.
Yeah, what we do here on a daily basis in regards to feedback from call-in shows and the videos we post and the live streams that are targeted toward specific teams. But that's what we've heard here all weekend is a lot of overreaction. And I try to settle people down, settle down. Yes, there were some important games played, no doubt. If Notre Dame loses this game, is their back up against the wall in regards to trying to make a college football playoff? Absolutely. If, we had three huge games in the Big Ten regarding, you get a conference win, you're a leg up versus being pushed into a corner, on and on and on. Yes, the games count. They're important. But in regards to drawing some kind of narrative about how good these teams are, this is all we've got to go on right now. So it means something. It's substantial, but we can go through a million examples of teams tearing off to great starts and then fading, other teams losing an early game and coming back to make a run. So let's not blow it out of proportion. No question about that. Would run defense be the biggest concern coming out of this?
Yeah. I would probably honestly say tackling. Which I know, we're playing tackle football, so it's a weird thing to say. The biggest thing, I think there were too many plays that maybe not even the chunk yards that happened, but it led to the chunk yards down the road, later in drives, where Notre Dame got to Travis, or they got to they got the running back, in the backfield. And then it turned into a 5-yard gain because they couldn't make the first tackle. And then all of a sudden it turns, what 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 10 is into, 2nd or 3rd and short. And then there's just a lot of different play calls you can make. Maybe you lose a little bit of confidence in that regard. Cause it did end up, I think in the second half, it ended up where almost every time they got in the backfield, there was a guy there and there was a missed tackle or a whiff or whatever it was. So that I would clean up just kind of like the simple fundamentals in that regard. But no, absolutely. I mean, I think the run defense could probably get handled a little bit better if you just get out of the 3-5. I think Notre Dame right now is still built to be a 4-3 team. That's what they were. They were, I guess, they played, I guess, a 3-4 and a 4-3 at times, but the 3-5 with 5 linebackers or an extra corner, or safety, on the field, that wasn't the strength of their roster over the last couple seasons. Their front seven is what makes them. It's what they recruited for under Clark Lee specifically. And I think you saw that early on. They pretty much got into the backfield whenever they wanted to. They made Jordan Travis's life hell for the majority of the first half. Outside of a few chunk plays here and there, but yeah, you clean up the run defense or just the scheme in general, and I think that you'll see better play.
All right, BGPO Football Funk, appreciate the super chat contribution. Good game between Florida State and Notre Dame. Absolutely, thank you for that. And I think we've pretty much covered the ground here. Again, wanted to get Nathan, although most of you probably very much aware of Nathan appearing on our channel here for quite some time. But Nathan's got his own podcast, Golden Homers. Check it out. If you like baseball, you like Notre Dame football, if you like a couple guys just kicking it around, right, Nathan? Nothing too hardcore.
Nothing crazy, just two, longtime buddies that love Notre Dame and love Chicago sports and stuff like that. So it's always a good time. We try to keep it, I hate the word like less professional or whatever, but we try to keep it a little bit more, fun and just, entertaining and, just kind of some banter between friends. So, so far, I think we're 4 episodes in, and it's going well so far. We've had some good guests on. Tom Loy, who's great over at 24/7 Sports on the Notre Dame beat, especially for recruiting. He was on our 3rd episode, and then we had a good friend of ours, John Kennedy of Always Irish, on the 4th episode. So we definitely we plan on bringing in some more. We might even have you on, Mark, if you're willing to come on. And so
the way that sounded coming out of your mouth, it sounded like if you get to the bottom of your list and you're looking around like we've used up everybody, we can go. Maybe Mark will come on. Yeah.
If you're willing to talk a little bit more than just Notre Dame football, we might have.
We can kick it around. Absolutely. Yeah. Keep me in mind if you get desperate.
Fair enough.
Folks, I was looking over our post-game schedule for next week. It's ridiculous, all this I got to keep track of, but it's good news for you because we've got like 20 post-game shows coming up next weekend. So Notre Dame's got Toledo. That, I believe, is a 3:30 start Eastern time. 2:30. Must be 2:30 Eastern time.
2:30.
Yeah, 2:30 makes sense.
That's also only streamed on Peacock. So if you are planning on watching that game, make sure you and a friend go in for $5 or whatever, and you got to get that game or you got to end up going to a bar or something like that. But that's only streamed on Peacock. That's the only Notre Dame home game this year that won't be on technically NBC Sports.
So Nathan's going to have the Notre Dame Post. I'm going to have to keep everybody updated on our schedule because, as you can imagine, we've got like log jams all over the place. So we navigated it yesterday. We will tomorrow as well, or next weekend as well. So Notre Dame post game is obviously going to be on the Notre Dame channel as this is right now. But beyond that, we'll either have it here or somewhere in addition to that. But check your local listings, as they say. Got a lot of stuff going on next weekend, but we're happy to have Nathan anchoring our Notre Dame post game coverage. All right, Nathan. Appreciate you locking things down for us. if nobody can tell, I'm sure many of you who watch me on a regular basis probably can, that my insight into this game was somewhat lacking. Basically, had the kids over, we had the game on, I could see the score, I could see the touchdowns that were being scored. That was pretty much it. So I've got no great insight into this one, other
and I
than
think I shaved 18 years off my life watching it. So I'm more tired than I probably should be at 9:30 my time. I'm usually stoked after a game like this, but I think I'm pretty tired now.
Well, maybe one more close call, Nathan, for Notre Dame football, and you'll be up to my age. We probably need one more to get you caught up. So, all right, good stuff, Nathan. Good to see you. Good luck with the podcast again. Golden Homers, and follow Nathan. We'll pull up his banner here in just a second, and of course, Notre Dame football talk after every Irish game. Nathan, again, it's always a good time, good discussion, and we will see you soon.
Absolutely. See you guys next week.
Absolutely. Our man, Nathan Urbach. Good to talk to him. I'm going to make my way through the rest of the chat, and we will have, again, our Florida State post game was supposed to be tonight, obviously after the game, but ran into some issues there. So there's going to be a Notre Dame a Florida State post game show. I don't know if that's going to be taped. Hopefully it's going to be live. I need to find out a little bit more about that. Our hosts hopefully will be getting together in the morning and providing Florida State post-game coverage over on the Florida State channel for all of you FSU fans that want to chop it up. And, of course, that's Nate Greer from Knoll Game Day who takes care of that for us. All right. DeAndre, thank you so much again for the Super Chat contribution. And let's see if we've got anything else here worth talking about. Texas, Arkansas. So this is what the post-game schedule looks like for next weekend. We will do a Virginia Tech Middle Tennessee pregame next Saturday morning right here on the main channel. We will have SEC postgame at 11 a.m. Eastern time on the SEC channel. We will have Oklahoma, Western Carolina pregame over on the Oklahoma channel, times to be announced. And then listen to this post-game lineup next weekend. We've got Ohio State and Oregon. Still have to figure out what I want to do with that, but most likely we'll do something here on the Ohio State channel, on the Oregon channel. That seems to make a whole lot of sense, right? It's an Ohio State-Oregon game. We'll put it on the Ohio State and Oregon channels. And also, it's a huge one right here on the main channel, the Voice of College Football. All right. Then we got Florida, South Florida. You'll see the post game for that. Florida, South Florida on the Florida channel and the SEC channel. We got Middle Tennessee and Virginia Tech. That's got to be right here on the main channel at about 5:30 should be the end of the game for Virginia Tech football right here on the main channel. And as we talked about, Toledo, Notre Dame over on the Notre Dame channel. Of course, we've got UAB in Georgia, Texas A&M, Colorado, Buffalo, Nebraska, Ball State, Penn State. Wait, Toledo takes on Notre Dame. Ball State, Penn State, Mercer and Alabama, the Tide with a rough one in week 2. Okay, here's a big one. Iowa, Iowa State. That post game's most likely it's going to be on the Iowa channel, of course, the Big Ten channel, and maybe even here. I'll have to figure that out. Then we've got an SEC wrap-up show at 9 p.m. Eastern time on the SEC channel. We got Oklahoma, Western Carolina. That's a night game. Miami, App State's a night game. Texas, Arkansas is a night game. We've got Texas post game. That one just came in under the wire for week 1. So we had not promoted Texas post game, but we've got Texas post game for you. And of course, the Longhorns with a tough one, interesting one against the Razorbacks coming up Saturday night. LSU McNeese State, Washington, Michigan on the Michigan channel, of course, and then Jacksonville State and Florida State over on the FSU channel as well. So tons of post game coming your way. And I'll be here after the Louisville Ole Miss game tomorrow night to take your calls. I will take your calls tomorrow night. Nice. Jeremiah saw the Texas post game on the Texas channel. So that is something we were just able to pull together hours before the Texas game started against Louisiana. So got Matthew Miller. He's our guy for Texas post game coverage. And again, they've got a good one against Arkansas coming up this weekend. Folks, if you have any special requests, now that we're in season, this is what I'm thinking, is that I'll give you a Heisman watch, maybe not every week unless you want it, but give you some kind of a Heisman watch every week or periodically. Also, I did this a number of times last season where I would provide a kind of a stock market watch. Who's going up, who's going down. Would you like to see that? Also, this isn't for right now. We need about 2 more weeks of football before we really start to measure up these conferences. So let's get 2 more weeks in of non-conference games, and then I'm going to lay it out. And when I say lay it out, that means put it into context, and not just that the Big Ten's 5-3 and the SEC 6-2 and the Pac-12 is 2-9. No. That doesn't tell us everything. You put the games into context, you see the teams, you look at the conferences, and make sense of it. So we'll do our conference comparisons in about 2 weeks after we've got 3 weeks in the books. There we go. We got Jeremiah. Mark, do you think Texas, Arkansas will be like Red River, where you throw out the performances and it turns into a dogfight? I don't even think we need to go that far. Texas was not substantially better than Arkansas last year. Now, Texas looked mighty impressive, especially in the second half against Louisiana. Stifling defense. Texas's defense, the attention's going to go to Bijan Robinson, who had an amazing game, and of course Hudson Card in his first start playing that well. But it was the Texas defense that really made that thing happen. They gave up 6 points in the first half and allowed the offense to get going. Arkansas, I anticipated a difficult time with Rice. I had that game on a second screen or a third or fourth screen, so I really didn't see it. I know they pulled away with 21 points in the fourth quarter. I do expect Texas and Arkansas to be a tough game. And Jeremiah makes a good point here, because Oklahoma has dominated the Big 12. But going back 6 or 7 years, they've been all 1-score games between Texas and Oklahoma. So Texas has pulled off a few upsets. 2017 was the most, or 2018 was the most recent. They also won a couple of years before that, the year that the Oklahoma Sooners made their first playoff appearance. 2015, Texas won. But the losses have been close. 1-score games. Last year, they went to overtime in a, 63-56 game. So, yeah, I expect a dogfight, Texas, Arkansas. And obviously, after tomorrow night's game, Louisville Ole Miss, I'll be delivering my top 25 that actually makes sense. There you go, Dependent Fanatic. I was so anxious to do the top 25 that actually makes sense that after we got off last night's call-in show, I started making out a top 25, and I got about 3 teams in, and then I thought, oh, we still have 2 football games this weekend. I got to wait. All right, anything else in here? We answered Jeremiah's question. So tomorrow, as it stands right now, I have scheduled recordings with Clemson, Michigan, and then also an Oregon live stream scheduled for tomorrow night, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, Oregon, Ohio State. We'll get it all together and talk Ducks and Buckeyes. Johnny Bays, good to see you, man. Golden Blue Dude, yeah, we'll get together, do another live stream. Absolutely. Anything else in here we need to hit? Florida State did cover. Hated to see that. I actually found myself somewhat rooting for Florida State once I knew that it wasn't a cover situation for Notre Dame late in the game and then into overtime because I picked the Irish to cover. So they screwed up my week to a certain extent. Catch us on Patreon. We've got my predictions and also 20 media members over on Patreon. It's 15 cents a day. I'm sorry. It's 17 cents a day on Patreon, $5 a month. So check it out there where you get my predictions. You get the predictions of 20 media members like Steve Dace and Steve Hellwagon, Kevin Noon, Tony Gerdeman, The Wholesome One, and others. 20 media members, plus myself, all our predictions. Plus you get Steve Merrill and his lock of the week. Steve Merrill from Wager Talk and Pro Sports Info. Also, one exclusive live stream per week, per request. So anybody who's on Patreon right now, understand that the reason you haven't seen an exclusive live stream in a while, there have been no requests. So per request, one per week. And an insider look at the voice of college football. So join us on Patreon. Just search Mark Rogers TV. You can either go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, or just go down to the description section of any video and you'll see the Patreon link right there. And I think we've hit the end of the line. There we go. There we go. BGPO Football Funk, DeAndre. Thank you so much for the contribution. Always appreciated, man. Will Clemson fall out of the top 10? We talking about that fake top 10? We talking about the coaches top 10 or the AP top 10? We talking about the one that makes sense? I don't know. I got to add it all up. So I got to consider that it's not all about, I go through this explanation every time I start the video, but basically it's about the performance on the field. So I rate the wins, I rate the losses, and the performance on the field. And for Clemson, we have to make an assumption that Georgia is one of the best teams in America. So Georgia did nothing, of course, last night to downgrade themselves by any stretch. So Clemson played a 10-3 game that pretty much came down to the last possession against a Georgia team that might be the best team in the country, probably the second or third or fourth best team in the country, probably in that top 4 range. And Clemson played them tough. They did lose the game. You get marked down for an L, but we evaluate the performance and we evaluate the opponent. Let's say Clemson loses that game to Georgia 50-0. Well, we're going to evaluate that performance differently than losing 10-3. And then let's say on top of that, let's say Clemson lost 10-3, but they didn't play Georgia. They played Georgia Tech. Well, then we got to evaluate that differently. So Clemson's probably don't hold me to this because I got to put all the teams together before I weed through it. I got to think Clemson's probably 15 or 20, something in that range. All right, Jeremiah. Question about, oh, yeah. Mark, what do you think about Pete Kwiatkowski leaving Washington? Of course, went to Texas because he wanted to see what he could do with access to better talent. And now I've got a pop-up that's over the question. I can't read the rest of it. Oh, my word. So, Pete Kwiatkowski leaving Washington, went to Texas. He couldn't, wanted to work, have access to better talent in the country. He wants to battle Saban for best defense. What do I think of that? Well, I think he's off to a great start. Say what you will about Louisiana. They have a tremendous team that would score more than 18 points against almost every team in America. I think that's quite the aspiration for him to give up a good gig at Washington to go to somewhere where there's going to be higher pressure. So let's admit it. Washington's a tremendous football program, usually in the top 15 in America. So there's a level of pressure there. I'm not discounting Washington and there being pressure. They pay big money to coaches on both sides of the ball to win at Washington, but it doesn't compare to Texas. So he saw the opportunity, he sees the opportunity, and he's off to a great start. And Texas played more sound defense on Saturday against a quality opponent than I can remember them seeing them play since probably Tom Herman's first team in 2016. That's when Herman came in. Actually, the defense was the reason for some level of success that year in going 7-6 with a bowl win over Missouri. And of course, Herman was the offensive guru who was supposed to up that side of the football. So I thought maybe Texas was off and running at that point. And they've really not played. They did, I think, have a 13-10 overtime game against a pretty good offense at Oklahoma State a couple years ago. But generally, Texas has played shootouts. Case in point, the 63-56 game against OU that I just mentioned. So the defense has not been good. It's underachieved. The defensive secondary recruiting has been insane and underachieving to a ridiculous degree. So that's my take on that. Dependent fanatic, Oklahoma should not be in the top 5, and I can't imagine that they will be in my top 5. They beat Tulane, who we would expect to be a fringe bowl team, as they have been the last 3 or 4 seasons. Out of the American Conference, they beat them by 5 points at home. Yeah. Jeff's top 10, I'm sure looks nothing like mine will, but he's got Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Oklahoma 4, Cincinnati 5, Clemson 6, Iowa 7, Presbyterian College 8. They should be higher. There's no question about that. UCLA 9, Iowa State 10. So Jeff, obviously, and we can do top 10s and top 25s in all sorts of different manners. But remember, when you see mine, keep this in mind. When you see my top 25 that actually makes sense, it has nothing to do with how good I think these teams are. That seems ridiculous, right? Why would it have nothing to do with how good I think the teams are? I'm evaluating one game. That's all I'm evaluating. They've played one game. UCLA, of course, has played 2. That's the only thing I'm evaluating. I'm not making a prediction. I'm evaluating one game. Therefore, do not expect Iowa State to be anywhere close to 10th in the country after their performance, or Oklahoma. Yes, the Rod Farva. Ole Miss Louisville. Call-in show tomorrow night. And anything else? Okay, folks. I am off to do some editing. We've got post-game shows from over the weekend that we need to edit for these channels. Need to get on that. Again, I'm looking at Clemson, Michigan, and Oregon content tomorrow, and an Oregon live show preparing for the Buckeyes, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on the Oregon channel, right here at the Voice of College Football. See you tomorrow.